Hello, welcome back to Peanut Butter Neya Time. You're here with me, Neya, and one of my closest friends, Kelly.
Hi.
This is Kelly. Kelly, tell us who you are.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I live in Hong Kong. I guess I have to talk about myself more, huh?
Is it, who are you?
What do I say about myself? I'm fun employed.
She's really fun. She likes Taylor Swift. We're pretty much sisters from another mister.
I think
and
so.
and sister.
Yeah.
And yeah, keep going.
I've been in tech for, I want to say 8 years now. But I just lost my job recently, so that's really fun. Yeah.
And you born and raised in Hong Kong, but American Korean. Not really from Hong Kong. She's a fraud. Okay, yeah, peanut butter. Oh yeah, how do we meet? So we met on a junk. So in Hong Kong, there are these like boat parties, and they're called junks. And we were very lucky to meet 2 years ago. So it feels like I've known her forever.
I know. Thank you for being my friend after I asked you for your name.
I can't. She has the worst memory ever. Such a short-term memory. It actually pains my soul. I was very offended. Okay, so obviously peanut butter Neya time. So do you like peanut butter?
I do. I like other nut butters more though, which I'm so sorry.
You're not like my first guess, Karina, was like, oh, I like cookie butter. I was like, that's not a nut butter.
Okay, I wouldn't go that far to say I'm not that. No, I don't.
You like nut butters?
Okay. No, I like nut butters.
Don't offend us out here. Okay.
Yeah.
What is your favorite other butter?
I'm a huge fan of any butter, like a mixed nut butter with pistachios in it, which is quite rare to find.
Okay. And the pistachios, are they crushed or are they whole?
They're crushed with the rest of the nut butter.
Just for reference, we had a very difficult discussion about this offline with many misunderstandings. But essentially, the pistachios are crushed into the butter. I haven't tried that. I will give it a try. Everyone out there, try it.
Yes.
Okay, so today topics kind of just more conversational, talking about Kelly and her life. She's very multifaceted, has had many experiences. A true inspiration to all. I've done it way too many times this podcast. But yeah, we're going to talk about Kelly being a high-performing athlete, and then also just like her journey of finding herself and happiness, and then also, I guess where she's at now, and a bit about spirituality. I'd like to touch a little bit on that for everybody after the last interview. So I think we'll start with high-performing athlete. Okay, what was your sport? How did you fall into it?
I was a competitive swimmer, and I've done it since I was, oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember my first swim lesson. 6. I think around like 7 or 8, someone told my parents I had a lot of potential, and that just streamlined their vision for me. So I was basically starting to do really intensive training from like 3rd grade, so like 8 years old and onwards. Yeah, by 10 I was already doing like double sessions. I spent.
Did you feel it as well? Did you feel like, oh, I'm a natural, I'm talented at this?
I knew I was decent at it. I don't think I was ever the best, but I was pretty decent at it, and I performed like okay. I was never like number 1 all the time. I was always like up there. But I guess good enough that my parents were like, okay, let's keep doing this. Like, this is working. Yeah.
Okay. So then that progressed to you becoming swimming for Hong Kong.
Eventually.
How old were you when you were like in that squad?
I joined the junior squad when I was, I think, like 11.
Wow, so young.
Yeah.
So then once you're in the squad, you just have to keep trying out every year.
You don't even try out because you're just like everyone's doing the same competitions in Hong Kong, so they just know your times. And then, so I wasn't really training with them at 11, but I would go to like these like swim meets with the Hong Kong like junior team.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. Okay, and then your swimming, it took you into the college. Okay, and then I guess where did your swimming journey end? Because you're not an Olympic swimmer now.
No.
We never would have met, even though
I am secretly like the female of Michael Phelps, but yeah, I didn't get there.
She got big feet.
I do. It ended my sophomore year of university. I decided I don't know if like a wake up call was what I would call it, but I like kind of realized I was allowed to quit the sport. So I finally did quit, even though I was recruited for the sport. But my coach was like super understanding at the time. And she's like, oh yeah, like if you want to like explore your own thing, you've swum for us for like 2 seasons. You did what you needed to do. And yeah, she was happy with me.
Was there like a moment where you were like, oh, you know what? No, I'm done. Or was it like a gradual thing? I mean, obviously it was gradual.
Yeah.
But like,
I think it definitely accelerated the summer before my sophomore year because I had my first taste of freedom where I was like studying abroad in Beijing and I didn't swim essentially for 2 months. I just did like weights and like dry land and that kind of thing. And then, and then when I got back to campus, I was like, oh, I'm like really, really unhappy. I think it kind of like coincided with like sophomore slump. And then I did a lot of self-work and like reflection on like why I was unhappy. And it kind of like came to like a realization like, oh, it's swimming. Like I don't want to be doing this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, let's touch on that for a second. So you did this like internal assessment and understanding. What did you do?
I read so many self-help books.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was, it was very aggressive.
Did you get like recommendations from people or you just, and like, did you get guidance on what to do or you just kind of like
I just kind of, I remember being really upset one day and I think I have kind of like a stubborn mentality of like, no, I have to fix this. Like I can't just sit here anymore and just like wallow in my sadness. Which it's okay to wallow in your sadness. There's always a time and place. But I was just like personally frustrated. And so I think the first book I actually read wasn't even related to like swimming. I think I wanted to, it was like about introversion and I didn't understand what that was. And then it kind of just like opened this like whole galaxy of like, oh, so many self-help books. And I think it was like either through Amazon or like other recommendations. And I got into the Enneagram that time. That's when I got into the Enneagram.
I understand. That's interesting. It's good that you like, you know, I mean, yes, it's fine to wallow and do what you got to do, but it was good that you had that, I guess, like persistence to figure it out for yourself as well. Which is good. It shows a lot about your personality. Okay, I think the last thing on like this high performing athlete space is just what, I guess, how did it shape you as a person being a high performing athlete for such a long time? Yeah. And I guess like what do you still, are you like, oh my God, that's so because of like swimming, personality traits or things that you do now?
I think a few things. And it's also kind of like hard at this point to like imagine my life having not done it as much as I didn't like the sport. I think the first one is I have a lot of like self-discipline because of it. I mean, it was like I did double sessions every day. Like you know, you can stick it out and do something you don't like, then you can stick it out and do something you don't like in a lot of areas in life. And so I forgot what quote I read recently, but it was basically being like, sometimes what you need to learn from education is just being able to show up and do the boring stuff.
That's so true.
Yeah. So I actually have a lot of confidence now. If there's a goal I want to achieve, but it's quite boring to achieve that goal, I know how to do it and like sit with the boredom. So that's one big thing. And actually going back to way earlier in our discussions about like, you know, my parents pushing me towards it, I found out as an adult, one reason my mom pushed me also into swimming really like a lot was because she was like, you grew up in a very privileged setting. Like you needed to, and I'm an only child. So like, you know, hashtag spoiled. She was like, I wanted to toughen you up. So that's why I really pushed you into swimming as a way to toughen. And I think she, like, it worked.
It worked. Yeah. I guess because it's like swimming's such a grind, right?
It's such a grind. Yeah. And you're like it's also like mentally you're by yourself for like basically 2 hours. Like you have no one else you can talk to. You don't have music to like distract you. So it's literally like, you have to be comfortable with just dealing with your own thoughts and like,
Does that mean that you're really good at spending time by yourself?
Yeah. Yes. Awesome. I'm a very big introvert, also only child. So I'm very good at being by myself.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I mean, to be honest, I think like that experience that you have is something that a lot of people like. I worry that a lot of like the newer generation. I'm sounding so old. I'm not that old, but like I'm the old one. But like I feel like people nowadays lack grit, and grit I think is like a big thing about life. Like you need to be able to. It's not always like rainbows and butterflies. It's like really crap sometimes. Yeah, and you have to just grind through the stuff that you don't want to do. Right? It's like you're not just gonna have like instant everything like gratitude for everything. Yeah, which I think is the sus thing with social media these days, but I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole because I've done it a few times. Yes. Okay. So, next, next topic is about finding yourself in happiness. I guess like since you moved out of swimming, you went through, I know that you've been through like a lot of different careers and like journeys. I think one thing that I find really interesting is like how have you, I guess, what inspired you to go down these different routes? Like, was it did you start because of you spent all this time, like, as a high performing athlete, doing something, I guess, not kind of for somebody else, but stuff that you didn't really love? Were you like, okay, now I'm just going to like 180 and go and focus on like everything that I'm interested in and like things I feel like I'm passionate about?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I think because I'd only done one hobby for so long, and I had all these passions, but they were kind of shut down at a young age for me. And I was like, oh my God, the world's like my oyster now. So I just went for everything. I jumped from, even in college before I graduated, I was like, oh, I'm going to do photography with the school newspaper. I'm going to do, mental health. I'm going to do like yoga teaching. Like I did all these food was a big phase I had. I was known as like the foodie, which is hysterical now because I can't even cook a meal. But like,
I'm like, what element of you was a foodie? Just you eating food?
No, I worked at 2 food companies.
I know you did chocolate and the other, but still. She don't cook.
I don't cook. I get stressed by salad dressing. But yeah, so I did that even within college. And then graduating, I think I was still quite lost, but then in my mind, the most natural thing was to go into teaching. But I think one thing I'm quite self-aware now is when I'm not happy in something, I'm pretty good at being able to identify that now. So that's why I've like jumped between like 5-6 different roles at this point, because every time I'm not totally happy with the role, I'll like try something else and see if that's a better fit for me. And I'm pretty unafraid to do that now. Yeah. Because I think I look back at swimming and see how much time I spent on that. Yeah. It's like super critical to me now with the time I have where I'm not swimming to like make good use of it and be like quite happy with my decisions.
Okay. Yeah. I think that's really interesting because I do think I want to touch on the point of like you switching between things and being very confident that like if you're not happy, you move. Because I know a lot of people who find it like, even to me, they're like, oh, I don't know how you move countries so often or you move into X, Y, Z. And I've always had the mindset like, oh, I just feel like you can just do it. Like you set the boundaries on yourself, right? Yeah. I think we've both kind of had this mindset. But I guess for you, what would your advice be to people who are like super scared, like they've been working, I don't know, in like one stream all their lives and they're super scared to like move into something else? I guess what would your advice be? Like, how do you find the confidence to upskill and move into something else?
I think the first part of just like how do you even do that or like have the confidence to just move, like not even talking about the upskilling part, is just no decision is permanent. I mean, maybe having a baby is pretty permanent, but like other than that, most decisions one takeaway from today, guys, pretty permanent thing. But in terms of like career, I think it's nothing is permanent. So if you go into something you don't like it, you could always go back to the thing you're at before. Maybe not the exact role or team, and so you always have to consider that. But I think living with the regret later in life for not having tried something is way more painful than staying there. So that's kind of the first aspect. And then the second aspect of the upskilling, it's just ridiculous how much content and education is out there. I think a lot of people could say maybe like a doctor, lawyer, obviously go get a formal education, but there's so many roles out there now where you can just teach yourself. And I would say all my roles I kind of taught myself, maybe minus teaching. I needed a lot more coaching on that, but like everything else was self-taught.
Yeah. So you just did like online courses.
Yeah.
And YouTube,
online courses, articles. And if you really wanted to be proactive about it, you could definitely find mentors or a community or a network that would also help teach you. I remember when I went into coding, I like actively would always go to meetups and like, just meet different coders. And someone added me to the Slack group that was like a Chicago coding Slack group. And there was like 20, 30 people in there and they're all very active. They're all just coders and they were helping each other out. And it was a really, really great community. And it was like pure chance. So
that's just like purely from you going out there and networking and meeting people. Which I've also been on this in my podcast, but like I just feel like your resume is like a small part of it, but you actually networking and meeting people is how you unlock like so many opportunities for yourself. And I totally agree with you. I think it's like so true what you said. Like there's so many resources out there, especially like we're so interconnected, and like I think education is reasonably more accessible now. Like you can really upskill yourself. But I think a big part of it though is like confidence. I think the first part of what we discussed of like having the confidence to do it, I agree with you. I think it's just like learning that you can take calculated risk. Like, so you just like, what's the worst that can happen in this situation? For example, you hate the job. It's fine. You have skills. You can go back and do something else. Yeah, so that's interesting. Okay. And then what's been your favorite, or actually what's been, I guess, the career job that you've had that helped grow you the most as a person?
Ooh, good question. Wait, favorite career job or which one helped me grow the most as a person?
The second one.
I would say the one that helped me grow the most as a person was when I taught in Southside Chicago.
Okay, talk to us more about this.
Yes. That one was just because it was so challenging. This kind of actually goes back to the swimming thing of like, you might have really hated something, but it might have like been formative enough in your life to like really change the way you see the world and also like give you confidence. So because it was so tough, I was a bad teacher my first year in terms of like, obviously I had good intentions, but I was so bad at this new environment, the way my school was teaching. I really struggled my first year and it was really hard, like really, really hard. And at the same time, having gone through all that, the skill sets I learned in the classroom and the mental toughness I got from doing that for 2 years is something that like when I go into any job now, it's not just confidence that I'll even do well, it's just confidence of even just like speaking up for myself.
Yeah.
Not, setting boundaries. Like that was a huge thing I had to learn from my first job, was setting healthy boundaries between my work and my life. And yeah, just the confidence that like, because my second year got way, way better. And I was like, I can actually improve in something I'm not even that naturally gifted at. So that was like really important for me to go through that. And now any job I take afterwards, I'm kind of like, not like piece of cake because I'm not like naturally good at any of the jobs I took afterwards, but it was like, I can do this. Like I can tough it out and like get this done. So that was probably the most important growth job for me personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that you kind of enjoy, it sounds like you like with swimming and this job as well, you like to actually you like to be in this space where you kind of don't like it, but you keep pushing yourself. And my question is it like when you're going through it, do you just think about the longer term of what you're benefiting from it? Like what drives you to like keep going?
Well, swimming wasn't really my choice.
Not swimming, but the teaching one.
Teaching, I also wanted to quit my first year. I was super I think it was like 95% about to quit because it's a 2-year program. So I was going to quit after my first year. And the only reason I stuck it out was because my second year, the way it was set up was like a little easier as well. So it was like, I got this. I wanted to complete it. Yeah. But I knew that was actually a second kind of hard lesson for me where I was like, do not do something if it makes you this unhappy. Because I was very unhappy for those 2 years as well. But I wanted to stick through the commitment to like finish the program. Okay. Yeah.
So you're a finisher.
I'm a finisher.
She's a finisher.
Yeah, but I didn't my other jobs were like, I was much happier on my other job.
What inspired you to teach though? Because you said it came naturally to you.
Did not come naturally. I was doing yoga teaching in college. And I think the thing I loved about it was like the creativity around like forming a class while at the same time you're helping people. Like those are two kind of like big kind of, I guess, like values I really cared about in my life. So I wanted to bring that, but obviously to like, yoga teaching is a very valid job, but I was like, I want to also explore like what other career paths there are. And I was like, school teacher, like, I love teaching kids, and which I did also in college, or not college. Oh yeah, college, where I like taught kids like a curriculum for like 3 months that I designed. So I enjoyed that. And yeah, I like the creative aspect of like creating like courses and that kind of thing. So that's why I chose teaching initially, because I was like, those are the things I like.
That you were interested in, you liked.
Yeah, at the time. Yeah.
Interesting. I don't think I could ever teach.
It's hard.
I'm so impatient. My mom was like,
it is like a lot of behavioral management, which I did not expect. My mom was like,
nope, you cannot do that. I'd just be like, sit down. I'd be that teacher from Matilda. What's her name?
That's a great book. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Miss it doesn't matter. We're gonna move on because that will take me like at least 10 minutes to figure out. Okay, I guess one of my other questions is, so having done all these different things, going through being like super regimented as a swimmer and like having a lot of discipline in that space, and then doing all these different like career jobs, obviously your life hasn't been. Well, I don't think it's obvious. So your life seems to have not been like super planned out in the later years. So I, in my podcast, talk a lot about like not planning so much and just like kind of going with the flow, which is what I've learned over time from my experiences. But what are your thoughts on that after your life so far?
I love the thought of going with the flow.
But do you think it's like easy to execute on?
I don't know if it's easy to execute because I think humans love the feeling of safety, right? So we're always looking for like a very defined roadmap and path. Actually, sorry, I'm saying humans, but then again, there's some people who love like no safety. So I think in terms of like execution of going with the flow, because sometimes you're like, okay, hear that advice, but like, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
I think one way to approach it is like creating a system of going with the flow where like you're constantly checking in with yourself and like evaluating like how you're feeling about things, or like, you know, doing like, this is gonna sound so tech nerdy of me, but like retrospectives frequently on your life, like every 2-3 months, just like check in, evaluate all the areas of your life. So it is going with the flow in the sense that like you're going with what feels right for your life, but you're being very intentional and planned around it. Like you're not just kind of like chilling at home and hoping something shows up at your door.
Agreed.
Yeah, you have to like proactively create the life you want. You can't just kind of like sit passively and go with the flow in that sense.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's a good definition and like structure that you put around it, because I probably see it the same way. And when I say like go with the flow, it's too broad and can be a bit too frightening of like a concept for some people. But agreed. Commercial break. Bringing to you Shadows. Shadows by Kelly and Neya.
What does your shadow say about you?
My shadow says, I'm tired. What does your shadow say?
My shadow says, always apply an SPF 30 when you go in the sun.
My shadow says, maybe even SPF 50 plus.
My shadow says, I don't think anything is different after 30 plus on SPF.
Oh my God, I think Australians would beg to differ.
Wait, really?
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like 50 plus is a difference.
Okay, I'm
30
gonna
plus
go
is
out
like
one
quite
day where I
minimal.
put like 30 plus on one arm and 50 plus on the other arm.
You do that. And you let me know how that goes for you. And you enjoy that tan line for the rest of the summer.
I'll get back to you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so last question in this part is what advice would you give your younger self?
It's going to be slightly off topic, but I'm going to genuinely advise this to anyone who is like in their younger years, is get as financially educated as possible. I know that's like a weirdly broad statement to make, but I'll dial it down a little bit more, which is learn about investing, learn about different assets and how you can grow your wealth, learn about passive income, different types of income streams, multiple income streams. Like, I wish someone had told me at a young age that like no job is safe. And I think, not to freak anyone out, but especially in this day and age with so much changing with AI and education systems are changing, I think it's something to always keep in mind and just always be willing to constantly learn and evolve and like build your wealth.
Totally agree. Because I something I always say is like, I wish in high school they had more practical financial classes. They actually taught you things like tax. Because like I'm like big thing for me is like, because I used to work in a debt collecting call center. Big thing is like how to manage your like credit cards, your loans. Like so many people, I'm like, you don't get taught this in high school, and then when you're 18 suddenly you can get this credit card, and then so many people find themselves like in trouble, or just like never had that financial literacy to understand what to do and like how to manage that. And so people fall into, and I was like, this is what you should be teaching me, not certain things that I don't need to know.
Agreed.
I agree with you.
Like, I feel like every school should have a financial
Every
literacy.
single school.
Like,
but
even just senior year.
Do you think they also don't do it because they want you to be like a little bit less educated?
Ooh, that's like one of those YouTube videos where we do like a deep, like, conspiracy.
Are we doing ASMR now? conspiracy. Seriously, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move away from that. We're not gonna become
Different episode.
conspiracists right now. Yeah. I would say before we move into like spirituality talk, I would want to like to know what drives you now and where, like, what things are you interested in at the moment in terms of like careers? So considering you're like fun employed, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have like a new kind of refresh, reset, clean slate to kind of like reconsider whether you do want to go into coding still or you want to look into other spaces.
Mm-hmm. So many areas. Mm-hmm. I think kind of what I alluded to earlier of why I went into teaching and realized it was not the right place for me. I still hold on to those like two core aspects of myself, and it's manifested in different ways throughout my career. Mm-hmm. So the first being like creativity and just designing things. I always loved doing that. So, having done like UI UX design, that's been a really fun, like, career and job to explore for myself. And also like in my personal life, I'll do like music or art and that kind of thing. So I still kind of hold on to that. Mm-hmm. In terms of how would I want to continue with that career path, I don't know. So I'm still like exploring that. Because I also do realize I like to be creative independently for myself as well. So that's always like been this like weird balance in my life. Yeah. And then the other part from teaching is I really like helping people. That's a huge, I think, part of me that I still hold on to, which is like when I went into UI UX design or front end, engineering, it was really lovely. My favorite part was like creating products that people love to use, and it's also like it helps them. So I still really like that aspect, and I want to hold on to that. And then also when I became a people manager at my last job, I really liked that because I was like coaching people. I was helping them like, improve or just making sure like if they have burnout, like how do they get through it? So I really like that. So I think I'm kind of also exploring, do I want to go more into management or go into coaching or I don't know. So it's
quite a fun space.
There's a lot of spaces. Yeah.
It sounds like one of your pillars is like, like helping people, but like being like impactful as well. Mm-hmm. Which is nice. Yeah. Okay, moving into spirituality.
Spirituality dance. We got spirituality dance.
Shadows are spiritual. I had a question. Okay, so last time I had a guest on, Karina, we were talking about what spirituality and kind of like her view on it. So I guess my first question for you is like what spirituality means for you.
I was not fully prepared for that.
It's fine. Okay, maybe like what things do you do to practice mindfulness, spirituality, and all that?
Sure. I think spirituality for me is just connecting with the world. Okay. So just kind of the oneness you feel with the world. Mm-hmm. And so anything I practice that makes me feel like that would kind of fall under, the spirituality area. So that could range from, walks in nature to meditating to actually doing like creative stuff for me is actually quite spiritual in a way. Because it's like, whoa, my brain neurons like created this thing. That's a really cool thing to experience, So in terms of, I think one thing I wanted to touch on with you is like the mindfulness aspect and like mindfulness meditation. I'm having done like that was my senior thesis in college. So I know like a lot about it from an academic perspective and even like from a neurological perspective because I like did fMRI scans. But in terms of actually daily practice, I should be better about it. But it's still okay. I incorporate it into like mini moments in my life. Yeah. And I think I had my discussion with Karina last time because I was saying to her like, oh, my meditation is like working out. And she was, and then she was like, yeah, that's fine. Like everybody has like mindfulness in a different way. Because I was like, I'm not very good at sitting down and just like breathing. Yeah. Like I can breathe, but it's my mind still like is like wandering and doing things. Whereas I feel like when I work out, I'm very good at like zoning and just focusing on like that. Mm-hmm. And for me, it makes me calm and gives me, I don't know, just makes me feel like I've done something for myself. Yeah. Yeah. So, and like connected with myself. Totally. So I guess for you, like creativity might be one of those things. So I think you're quite creative, like every day, even if when you like just think of like random thoughts. Yeah. And ideas. Yeah. For sure. But speaking about your thesis, so what was the actual topic? It's like a mouthful of a title. I basically looked at people who went through a mindfulness meditation program for 8 weeks and was doing like a pre and post analysis of their brains and like the neuronal density. And one psychological metric I was curious about measuring, this is a whole like wormhole, which I won't go into this podcast, but I was curious about whether people were like more creative after they went through the program. The problem with this from a scientific standpoint is that creativity is like not, it's really hard to measure and define.
Yeah, I was about to ask you.
It's very philosophical. Oh, yeah. I could go on like for an hour about this, which I will.
Okay. Not today.
Not today, kiddos.
There's a comment below if you want the hour podcast.
But it still was really fascinating to learn about. And my hypothesis of like why I think people who like started incorporating mindfulness meditation would become more creative was because mindfulness meditation, you're noticing your thoughts, and what, you know, big benefit of noticing your own thoughts is you notice when you're judgmental. So that's kind of one really helpful thing. The other thing is you're just calmer and more present. And so when you're more present, you're able to like listen for connections in your brain, just be more open-minded, which is, you know, all these things are really great for creativity and helping you kind of form those connections and like aha moments. Whereas if you're like kind of preoccupied with something, you know, that's going to impede the creative like kind of thinking that you want.
Interesting. So then when you did your experiment, was your mindfulness action just meditation? Like that the people were doing?
Oh yeah, so they went through an 8-week.
But that was just like what sort of was it just meditation? Like what sort of, I guess, was it?
Yeah,
what was it?
It's called mindfulness meditation. It's the person who kind of like created the program. It's called MBSR, mindfulness based stress reduction, and it's created by this guy named John Kabat-Zinn. And so it's like an 8-week program. They'll do everything from like walking meditation, sitting meditation,
so they have
eating
all these
meditation,
different types.
hatha yoga. Yeah.
So these people who went through an 8-week program, they would just have to do something every day?
I think so. I forgot how many classes. I never actually did it. I think I did like a CD version of it, but like CDs. But it was like dates me. It's fine. But it was like I think they went to like maybe 2 sessions a week or 3. But then they had homework. Like they had to go home every day and meditate for like 45 minutes or something like that.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So then I guess from your thesis and your experience with mindfulness, speaking to a layman and like somebody who was interested in like the idea of mindfulness and helping to tap into more like of a creative mind, what sort of advice would you give of small things that someone can do to be mindful?
Just mindful, not the creative part, right?
Yeah, just mindful.
Yeah, I think like, let's say kind of what you mentioned earlier, like you don't like sitting and being mindful. Again, mindfulness just comes down to like being aware of the present moment and also being aware of your thoughts if they come in and being able to notice that they're taking you away from the present moment.
Okay.
So as long as you practice that in whatever activity you're doing, you're basically practicing mindfulness. So if you're just walking down the streets to work, you know, for 10 minutes, you could practice mindfulness. Or if you're running on treadmill for 10 minutes, if you're really paying attention, you know, your bodily sensations, like your breath, and not focusing on the thoughts at all, you're just really focusing on the experience, then you're practicing mindfulness. You can even like listen to like your favorite album for like an hour.
Yeah.
And again, it's as long as you like anytime a thought comes into your brain and you notice there's a thought and you're like, okay, I see you, and you like let it go. That's mindfulness.
Okay. Interesting. I'll practice that more when I'm at the gym.
Yeah.
So I don't have to focus then on lifting the weight and not having a thought. Or is lifting
you focus purely on lifting the weight.
Or is thinking about lifting the weight a thought? No.
Do you want a fun game? Total tangent.
Okay.
She's scared. No, it's like there's a type of meditation. This isn't mindfulness meditation, but it's called like almost like a meta, like meditation where it's like you notice the thought and then you ask yourself, who is noticing that? I noticed that thought, and you just kind of go into this like inception type awareness in your brain. Yeah, I know. It's a little bit much.
Maybe let's all not try that. Focus on what you're doing right now. That might be, I have a lot of people being like,
But going back to the weightlifting example, to be mindful for weightlifting, you would just really feel every movement you're doing. So you're hyper aware of like, I don't know if you're doing like what's a weightlifting thing?
Okay, so like say I'm doing, so actually it's a big thing when you weightlift or like you're you're doing weight training is like mind muscle connection.
Yes.
So if I'm doing mind muscle connection, I'm thinking exactly about that glute that I'm working when I do that squat.
Yeah.
Then that's being mindful.
Correct.
Yeah.
So like if any distracting thought comes in, you kind of like notice it,
Mhm.
but then refocus on your glute. Then yeah, kind of mindfulness.
Yeah. I'll actively practice it more. But then when I work out, I listen to music or a podcast sometimes as well. So then I'm like, but I'm not actually thinking about anything. I just like listen.
I think maybe the music, if you were kind of still hyper focused on your glute, that could still be mindfulness. The music is kind of just there, right?
Yeah.
Versus I think when you're doing a podcast, you're probably focusing on the podcast and not
It's
your
true.
glute anymore. Yeah.
I kind of
so
stopped listening to the podcast because I kept laughing mid squat. It was very dangerous. I was like laughing mid squat. But I was trying to breathe as well. It was not. I've stopped doing that podcast because it makes me laugh too much. But yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Well, any parting words?
Oh, I don't know. Nothing in particular. Just practice mindfulness, everyone.
Practice mindfulness. Yeah, but anyway, thanks for coming onto the podcast.
No problem.
The good old pod. Got anything you want to plug?
I do offer coaching if anyone's interested.
She does. She's an awesome coach.
Thank you.
Coaches me sometimes.
I try.
Anyway, thank you for coming, and